early 70s, there was a TV show, which they later made some movies about, called Mission Impossible. And, that started up with that music, dun, dun, da, da, and then Mr. Phelps got a package. It was a cassette recorder, and you never knew where he was going to get it. He might be on a train or a plane, and somehow this package would mysteriously appear in front of him, and he would listen to this. Mr. Phelps, your mission if you decide to accept, and then it would go on and you have some sort of exciting mission. And I remember every week looking forward to watching that show. It was always pretty exciting. And as far as I can recall, I don't think there were people killed very often, if ever. Usually it was just sneaking around and doing things clandestine-ish, and it was great. But the reason I mention that is because in reality, all of us have a mission. All of us have an assignment. And God has created uniquely and has given you an assignment. He has given you an individual assignment, and He's also given you an assignment in the context of this body of believers. And I want to talk about that assignment this morning. And I'm going to do it in the context of the beginning of a new series that I'm starting this morning on the first 3 kings of Israel. And this morning we're going to start with the life of Saul. And we're going to do a couple of weeks, I think, on Saul, a couple on David, and a couple on Solomon, I think. So that's as much as I know now. And as the weeks go by, we'll all know more. But to sort of set the stage before we look at Saul, let me just sort of give you a brief snapshot history as to how we get to Saul. Some of you may not be familiar with the story, but I'll start with Abraham. Abraham is sort of considered the father of humans' relationship with God, and he is sort of the one that began the course of God's rescue plan. And God's rescue plan is multifaceted, I guess is the word I want to use. He wants to rescue his creation because his creation is broken, and he wants to rescue humanity. And the reason his creation is broken is because humanity is broken. And so he has this great plan to rescue us and to put us in the process of rescuing each other and of rescuing the planet. And so your assignment in somehow relates to that. I can assure you that the assignment that God gives you somehow relates to rescuing either creation or humanity. It's not just about you having a good time or having fun. You'll find fun, you'll find enjoyment, you'll find satisfaction in that plan because that's what you were created for. That is your bent. That's the gifts that you have. That's how God equipped you to fit in that specific place that no one else would. It's an amazing thing. And Abraham had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau, and Jacob had 12 sons, and those were the 12 tribes of Israel, with a couple of Joseph's kids as well. And you may know that during the time of Jacob, they moved into Egypt and lived there with the Egyptians, and eventually the Egyptians began to abuse and sort of take over them and enslave them, and they were there for quite a few hundred years, and then God raised up Moses, and you've all seen the movies, I'm sure, of Moses, and raised as, in fact, we had a sermon about him and how he was raised by the Egyptians, but then discovered he was, in fact, Hebrew, and was, in fact, God's Messiah, God's rescuer. From Egypt, they went into the wilderness for 40 years and wandered around. And then at the end of the 40 years, Joshua took over command from Moses and led the Israelites into the conquest of Palestine. And it wasn't a total conquest. It took about 7 years for them to establish themselves throughout Israel so that they had control. There were still enemies all over, and for the rest of their existence, it was a story of hanging onto the land and reclaiming areas that were lost. But about 7 years. And then we went to this long period of several hundred years called the Judges. And during that period of time, there were specific judges, both female and male judges, who sort of ruled in a sense of, as far as saying what the law was and what was right and what was wrong. And there were these numerous cycles that the entire Israelites went through, where they would rebel against God and they would fall away from God, and then God would send oppressors, and then the judge would raise up and lead them to victory, and they would follow God for a while, and then they would turn away. So there's this constant mulling of cycles. During this time, the people were looking more and more at the cities around them, which had strong king figures. And they said, you know what, we really want a king. And God kept saying, you don't want a king. And they kept saying, yeah, we want a king. And God would say, if you have a king, he will take your young men off to war. He will take the best of your fruits. He'll waste a lot of your money. And you don't want a king. And they said, yeah, we want to be like everybody else. We want a king. So finally, God acquiesced, and in this dramatic meeting early in Samuel, via the prophet Samuel, God gives in. He says, okay, I'm going to let you have a king. So we discover ourselves with the first king in 1 Samuel, if you want to turn with me there. And the first few chapters of Samuel is about Samuel. And Samuel was one of the most amazing prophets in the entire history of man's relationship to God. And a remarkable person. You probably remember the story of Samuel as a little boy. His mother took him, and he actually grew up in the temple from probably grade schoolish age, and became an amazing prophet of God. So Samuel's the ones that's telling them, you'll be sorry if you have a king, and then finally acquiesce. And at the very end of chapter 8, verse 22, the Lord answered, listen to them and give them a king. And so this is how the king comes about. So I want to work through chapter 9 with you. I want to tell you about the story of Saul becoming the first king, about Saul receiving this amazing assignment. His assignment was to be the very first king of Israel, and you say, well, I'll never have an assignment like that. But your assignment isn't about the value or the size, it's about your faithfulness and about your obedience to it. And sometimes the smallest of assignments have the greatest impact on our world and upon our planet. And so it's not about becoming president or an ambassador. It may be just doing something very simple and small, but it is your part, and it can have a long-lasting and incredible influence on God's overall plan of rescuing us and rescuing the planet. So let me just work through this chapter, and I just want to share some observations about Saul and hopefully about you as well and about me. Chapter 9, there was a Benjamite, a man of standing whose name was Kish, son of Abiel, the son of Zerah, the son of Bechorath, the son of Aphiel, of Benjamin. Kish had a son named Saul, as handsome a young man as could be found anywhere in Israel, and he was a head taller than anyone else. And what strikes me about this is that God created you specifically, not just in your temperament, but literally with your body. God gave you the body that he gave you to fulfill the actions that he's going to give you in your life, the assignments that he's going to give you. And so when you look at the mirror and you say, man, I wish I had a different body. I wish I looked different. I wish I was taller. I wish I was shorter. In fact, what you're saying is that I want to be something different than God's plan. Because God, it says, from the womb, created you the way that you are. I've been watching this series called The Cosmos. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, which is a remake of what's his name? Carl Sagan. Yeah. And it's really interesting, fascinating series, enjoyable, but the whole point of the series is that you're just a random accident. That, you're just this miraculous random thing that just happened. And it could be very disturbing, perhaps, to someone who didn't know very much science and realize that there's these huge gaps that they're leaving out. There's these huge questions that they're not answering. They just sort of move past them, and he'll be going along. I'll go, wait a minute. I want to raise my hand and say, wait, I have a question here. You've missed a few million things. Can I just talk about that? And of course they don't, because they talk about these points and they miss the huge gaps. But there are some parts of it that are amazing and they're true, and I'm convinced of them. And but their main message is that you don't need to believe in God, because you're just a random occurrence. You just happened, and you should be thankful that you happened. And I want to tell you that God says that's not true. That's a lie. That God precisely made you, that he formed you in your mother's womb to be the specific person that you are, with the specific gifts and abilities that you have. Let's move on. So Kish gives Saul this assignment to go look for some donkeys. And they're lost. They've wandered off, so he gives Saul and his servant this assignment. And they wander off quite a ways away from where they are, and they don't find the donkeys. And they're coming to this town. And in verse 6, the servant says this. Let me read this. Servant replies, "Look, in this town there is a man of God. He is highly respected, and everything he says comes true." Oh, I wish that was true of me. "Let's go there now. Perhaps he will tell us the way to take." Saul said to his servant, "If we go, what can we give the man? The food in our sacks is gone. We have no gift to take the man of God. What do we have?" And the servant answered him again, "Look, I have a quarter of a shekel of silver. I will give it to the man of God so that he will tell us which way to go." Formerly, in Israel, if someone went to inquire of God, they would say, "Come, let us go to the seer," because the prophets of today used to be called a seer. And it was common courtesy, if you went to inquire of somebody or to ask somebody a favor, you would have some sort of gift in that culture. And in fact, the prophets of then, as the pastors of now, serve the people, serve the congregations, serve other people, and so they don't have the ability to earn their own keep, and so it's courteous, it's polite, it's the responsibility of the whole to support them, and so that's in fact what they are doing here. "Good," Saul said to his servant, "come, let's go." So they set out for the town where the man of God was. As they were going up the hill to the town, they met some beautiful young women. I added the word beautiful because all young women are beautiful. Well, middle-aged women are beautiful too, and older women. Maybe I better just keep going. And they asked them, "Is the seer here?" "He is," they answered. "He's ahead of you. Hurry now, he has just come to our town today, for the people have a sacrifice at the high place. As soon as you enter the town, you will find him before he goes up to the high place to eat. The people will not begin eating until he comes, because he must bless the sacrifice afterwards. Go now, and you will find him about this time." They went up to the town, and as they were about to enter it, there was Samuel coming toward them on his way up to the high place. Now the day before Saul came, the Lord had revealed this to Samuel. "About this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin, anoint him ruler over my people Israel. He will deliver them from the hand of the Philistines. I have looked on my people, for their cry has reached me." When Samuel caught sight of Saul, the Lord said to him, "This is the man I spoke to you about. He will govern my people." What strikes me as amazing is Saul's ability to simply commune with God. And I don't suspect that every day of his life was like that, but there were days of his life like that. And I think there should be days in our lives that are like that. That our ability to talk to God should be such that sometimes we literally know exactly what he wants us to do. And that only can happen if we cultivate it. It's not something that you just simply are born with. It only comes as you cultivate it. I think one of the great misnomers that we have about prayer is that it's a request line to God. And it's not. The request part of prayer is incidental to the most primary part of prayer, is learning to commune with God and to hear his voice. And that comes from time spent with him, time spent alone with him, time spent in community with him. And there are things that you learn about your ability to talk to God that happen only when you are in a quiet, solitary place all by yourself. That needs to be a regular part of our lives. I think every week, at the minimum once a month, where you have a significant hour or two where it's just you and God, just speaking and communing with him. There are also things that only happen in the community. And, Saturday night we have a time for the community to come and just pray. But there's only a few people there. Once a month we have a time when the whole community can come and pray. But there's only a few people there. And I believe that the reason that more of you aren't there is because you don't understand what it's all about. You think, I can pray by myself. I'll just say a few prayers while I'm here during the commercials. But something literally happens when we are together. God teaches us about communing with him. I'm not trying to scold you. I'm just saying you're missing something. You truly are. And you're frustrated because you don't know about your life and where you're supposed to go. the first thing you need to do is cultivate your prayer life. How do you expect God to give you the message if you can't hear him? That has to happen. Okay, jumps on, and Saul encounters him and starts to tell him about his life. So another thing that we realize here, that in the context of the community, sometimes God speaks to us, to other people. He might speak to you through my message. He might speak to you through the sharing time, through the music, through someone else's prayer. So there's this definite aspect with God speaking through his people to us that's really important in finding what your assignment is. And so Samuel tells Saul, he starts to give him a little hint about this assignment. And Saul's response is, I'm nobody. I'm a Benjamite from the smallest tribe. What am I doing here? And Samuel has invited him to this feast, which is a place of honor, and has given him the place of honor in the feast, and then even gives him the food of honor in the feast. And so Saul is just overwhelmed by all this attention. And, it just illustrates that you truly do find your place and your value and your sense of importance when you find your assignment, when you know why you're here. And, we live in a culture of people, not only in the church, but in the world, of people that are just frustrated, and they're constantly trying to figure out what it is I'm here for. Why am I here? Moving along. So has this feast the next morning. Samuel asks Saul to wait behind. He has some words for him. Sends the servant off ahead. And he takes a flask of oil in chapter 10 and poured it on Saul's head. And the word there for pouring actually is the same root of Messiah. It's anointed one. It's the same word that we use for Christ. And so there's this sense that when you find God's purpose, that's when you are anointed for life. And there's symbolism there of the Holy Spirit in filling you, and the acknowledgement and recognition that once you understand what it is that your assignment is, you have this deep sense of your need of God. And it will literally drive you deeper into God's presence as you realize, wow, this is more than I possibly can do. And let me just say at this point that throughout life, you may have many different assignments. I think Karen's getting ready for a new assignment next week when she retires. Something huge is going to change in her life. But there are also many small assignments. You may have various assignments through the week. You may have larger assignments that take months. They may have great significance, or they may be something really small, but God just says, this is what I need you to do right now. It may seem insignificant, but it is part of this thousands and thousands of years of planning that I am doing to rescue this planet. And some of you know exactly what your assignments are today. We can see what your assignments are, what you're doing, ministries that you're involved with. Maddie's ministry in the high school with those hundreds of kids that she does every week with Whispers. Amazing. Margie's ministry right now with Nikki, taking care of her. Some of you are just doing amazing things. And Lorraine ministering to that adopted or those refugee families. I could just look around the room and look at lots of things that you have assignments. We all should have assignments. We all should know what our assignment is. Some of them are small, some of them are short term, some of them will maybe last years and years. But once you have your assignment, God anoints you and fills you with the Holy Spirit. This is what happens next. Jumping down to verse 6. The Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will prophesy with them. You will be changed into a different person. Once the signs are fulfilled, do whatever your hand finds to do, for God is with you. You won't need to say, God, your will be done, because you'll know what God's will is. God, simply give me the ability, give me the courage, give me the strength to do this assignment you've given me. Jumping down, as Saul turned to leave Samuel, it says God changed Saul's heart, and all the signs were fulfilled that day. I suppose in a sense it might seem a little frightening, But God will never change you into something that you dislike about yourself. He will only change you into becoming the person that you were fully intended to be. He's simply taking what was broken and wounded from life and bringing it to completion. That's the wonderful thing about his assignments. And they aren't just for his glory, although he glorifies in your repair. They are for us. Literally the most selfish thing in the world you could do would be to give yourself to God. The most caring of your soul thing to do would be to accept God's assignments. So, jumping ahead. So then comes the time, and for this great celebration to anoint the king. And Saul shows up, and it says that the people of Israel are all there, and they're getting ready to anoint Saul king. And so Saul wants to illustrate to them as well who this king is. And so he starts going through tribe by tribe by tribe. And he narrows it down to the tribe of Benjamin. He narrows it down to the household of Kish. And Saul's not there. Saul's gone. And they can't find him. And so Saul starts praying and says, God, where is Saul? Where's Saul? You know, we have this huge celebration. We're down to the very climax, and there's no Saul. And God says, he's hiding in the baggage. He's hiding in the baggage. They looked for him. He was not found, so they inquired for the Lord, has the man come yet? And the Lord said, yes, he's hiding himself among the supplies. So they ran and found him, and as he stood among the people, he was a head taller. And then he goes ahead. The baggage is a place of safety. The baggage, you know, they lived in these tents, and that one tent would be where they would stick their supplies. And so you could go in there, you know, you could have a dried fig, a little bit of lamb jerky. You could cuddle up in a robe, and you could kind of just hang out in there. It's kind of safe. Just, this is a nice place. I don't have to do anything. Nobody has any expectations of me. This is a safe place. This is a great place to hide. God gave me a verse this week that I was supposed to share, but I'm just going to sit here. This is really nice. I'll let other people share. And the baggage is a place that steals from us. It steals our life. A couple weeks ago, we literally had a world-class pianist here. This guy had just completed a tour through Europe and played 40 concerts in places in France and Italy and Czechoslovakia, I think was the other country he went to. He's made CDs, he's played in prominent places. This guy's renowned. We had him here at our church. Incredible, incredible privilege. And you know what? I would say, and I will say, the majority of the people that were here were from our community. 75% of the people in this room were from our community. And there was only a handful from our congregation. And I'm not scolding you, well, maybe just a little bit. But you see, you missed an incredible opportunity by hanging out in the baggage. That's more, I don't really get off on classical music. God has been using classical music for hundreds of years to declare his glory. The most brilliant artists that have ever walked this planet played classical music. This guy has brilliant gifts. Not only that, but he stood and shared his testimony. Every time he shares it, it's different. And it stirs your heart and it challenges the people. So here we had an opportunity with dozens and dozens of people from our community that we could interact with and say, yeah, this is life. But most of us were hiding in the baggage. You don't want to miss TV. I don't know. Some of you had great excuses, I'm sure. But the baggage prevents us from fulfilling God's activity. It muffles it. We can't quite hear it. Pull the rubs over our head, we can't quite hear God speaking to us. It's just comfortable here. We have to be willing to step out of the tent and say, God, this is scary a little bit. I'm a little bit terrified by this assignment you've given to me, but I want life. I don't want death. I I want life. I want to be part of that incredible plan that you have to rescue this planet and humanity. Some of those people in this community, some of my neighbors, some of my friends, they need rescuing. And I might be the only one. It might be my destiny to rescue those. Let me tell you one other thing that happens to Saul. All the people are all excited. People shouting, "Long live the king." Samuel spends time talking to the people about what the king's going to do and what their responsibility are. And then in 26, it says, Saul also went to his home in Gibeah, accompanied by valiant men. So here, other people are caught up in Saul's assignment. They're excited too. And they're yeah, we're with you on this, And so this assignment to Saul actually becomes a greater assignment. It's an assignment of the people. And you see that happening when God gives one of you an assignment. The rest of us get excited about it. We want to support it. We want to be a part of it. But some scoundrel said, "How can this fellow save us?" They despised him and brought him no gifts. But Saul kept silent. And let me just say to you that probably inevitably, as you accept your assignment, you'll have people, you'll have events, you'll have things which want to discourage you. As soon as you start making something happening, wherever your assignment is, as soon as you start building a sense of joy and peace and excitement, there'll be people that will want to bring discouragement to you. And your first reaction will be, "I'm giving up on this assignment. It's too hard. It's not going anywhere. This is discouraging. I'm not going to do this anymore." And I just want to encourage you to hang in there. The battle belongs to the Lord. Saul kept silent. He understood that this was about God and them. It wasn't about Saul and him. Hang in there. God's determined that the victory will be his. He's given you the assignment. He's given you the resources, but he's also got your back. He's the one that will encourage you. He's the one that brings you encouragement. He's the one that will provide you with what you need more than anyone else. Let's stand together and let me say a prayer for you.